These are the most shocking, interesting, historical photos and unusual objects from the past. A 1925. For the first time, passengers were shown a movie during a flight. The silent adventure film, The Lost World, based on Arthur Conan Doyle's novel, marked the birth of in-flight entertainment, a luxury that would later become standard. The world's first passenger flight, 1914, Tampa to St. Petersburg. This 1926 photo shows the dawn of air travel at Croydon Airport, England. A collision involving two locomotives on the Bay of Quinte Railway, Ontario, Canada, 1895. The Bay of Quinte Railway operated in the late 19th century and was later merged with a navigation company. Day 1951, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg became the most infamous symbols of America's Red Scare. Accused of passing atomic secrets to the USSR, they were executed, though historians now believe Ethel may have been innocent. A crowd of 30,000 runners crosses the Verrazzano Narrows Bridge on Staten Island during the New York City Marathon, USA, 1999. A pizza delivery worker shields with a pizza box during a snowstorm. New York City, USA, March 1993. The storm was recorded as one of the strongest of the decade. Crowds of people crossed the Brooklyn Bridge during a major blackout that shut down the subway. New York City, USA, 1978. The bridge, built in 1883, links Manhattan and Brooklyn. The corner of 7th Avenue and 42nd Street at Times Square, featuring the Rialto Theater, Playland Arcade, restaurants, and shops. New York City, USA, 1967. The Radio City Rockettes performed during the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. New York City, USA, 1964. The parade has been held annually since 1924. A helicopter lands on the roof of the Pan Am building, now MetLife building, designed by architect Walter Gropius. New York City, USA, 1966. A hand-operated rope-making tool used to twist strands into a single rope. By turning the crank, multiple threads are combined into a strong rope. 20th century. Civil rights activists march in Harlem in solidarity with the Selma protests. New York City, USA, 1965. These demonstrations followed Bloody Sunday and contributed to the passage of the Voting Rights Act. Two models in high-waisted dresses and velvet cloche hats pose with fur muffs on the Tudor City Bridge during a Vogue photo shoot. New York City, USA, 1958. Crowds gather at the original Nathan's Famous stand in Coney Island. New York City, USA, 1955. The eatery was founded in 1916 by immigrant Nathan Handwerker. 15-year-old Valerie Harper performs a split leap during a campaign to save Carnegie Hall, New York City, USA, 1955. Two dancers beside her hold signs calling for fundraising support. A woman tosses ticker tape from a balcony during Victory in Europe Day celebrations. New York City, USA, May 8, 1945. On this day, the Allies accepted Nazi Germany's surrender. Crowds celebrate New Year's Eve at Times Square, New York City, USA, 1938. The tradition of gatherings began in 1904, with the first official ball drop held in 1907. Curb market traders gesture while trading stocks on Wall Street. New York City, USA, 1925. The market dealt with securities not listed on the New York Stock Exchange. An East Side street with the elevated railway and shops, including pawn offices and stores selling furs and suitcases. New York City, USA, 1925. Signs advertising credit services and diamond dealers are visible on the facades. Young girls dance the Charleston on a Harlem street. New York City, USA, 1923. The dance rose to fame after being featured in the Broadway show Running Wild. A woman hangs a poster advertising a Halloween ball in Greenwich Village, New York City, USA, 1922. The neighborhood was known as a hub of bohemian life in the city. Deputy Police Commissioner John A. Leach oversees alcohol being poured into a sewer after a raid, USA, 1921. Prohibition lasted from 1920 to 1933. Ernest Hemingway poses with a giant tuna caught during a fishing trip. Cuba, 1930s. The writer was well known for his passion for deep-sea angling. A photograph of 18-year-old Angeze Gongshe Bojakshiu, later known as Mother Teresa, Skopje, Ottoman Empire, 1928. On the right is her portrait in later life. Donald Smith drives the last spike of the Canadian Pacific Railway during a ceremony at Craigellachie, British Columbia, Canada, November 7, 1885. The event marked the completion of the transcontinental line. A woman stands beside a giant cedar tree in Stanley Park, Vancouver, Canada, 1897. The park was officially opened in 1886 and became one of the largest urban forests in North America. Workers lay out cod to dry along the shore of St. John's. Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada, circa 1900. Dried fish was one of the region's main export products. The method of salting and curing had been used by fishermen since the 16th century and remained central to the trade for centuries. The Louvre glass pyramid under construction, Paris, France, 1987. Originally built as a fortress in 1190 and later transformed into a royal palace, the Louvre became a museum in 1793, completed in 1989. Construction of the spaceship Earth Pavilion at Epcot, Orlando, USA, circa 1980. The park opened in 1982 as part of Walt Disney World and was envisioned as the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. A team of chefs loads meals onto an Eastern Airlines aircraft, USA, 1930s. At that time, air travel was seen as a luxury experience reserved for wealthy passengers. U.S. Vice President Richard Nixon and Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev during the famous debate at the American National Exhibition in Moscow, 1959. This kitchen debate became a symbol of the ideological rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. 1948-1949. During the Berlin blockade, Western allies launched the airlift, flying in food and fuel to the encircled city. Over 270,000 flights in 11 months saved 2.5 million West Berliners from starvation. 1920s. The cabin of the Farman F-60 Goliath looked more like a school bus, with hard seats and paper-thin windows. Seatbelts and aviation wouldn't be introduced until 1972, making flying more of an ordeal than a luxury. 1968. At age 26, Muhammad Ali appeared on the iconic cover of Esquire, depicted as a martyr, pierced by arrows. The image symbolized his defiance against the Vietnam draft and the political persecution he faced. 1949. U.S. President Harry Truman signs the founding treaty of NATO, bringing together 12 nations. Built on the principle of an attack on one is an attack on all, the alliance became the West's military shield during the Cold War. 1950. The Korean War marked the first major proxy conflict of the Cold War. This photo shows U.S. Marines storming Incheon, climbing ladders up the cliffs during the daring amphibious assault that turned the tide of battle. 1929. In transcontinental airliners, stewards served passengers in conditions of cold, drafts, and constant shaking. The photo shows how the flight attendant bends over, pouring tea, and the pilots can be seen through the transparent doors, something that seems impossible today. Coco Chanel in 1910 and 1957. On the left, a young designer opens her first fashion house in Paris. On the right, an already recognized legend who changed the world fashion at the age of 74. 1952. The United States conducted the world's first hydrogen bomb test at Enewetak Atoll in the Pacific. The blast was 2,500 times stronger than Hiroshima, with a fireball spanning 25 square miles that vaporized carved a crater into the ocean floor. The atoll remains radioactive to this day. In the 1930s, postcards featuring giant grasshoppers became a popular joke in America long before Photoshop. This image from Montana is a classic example of early photo manipulation used for humor, leaving a quirky mark on the visual culture of the era. In the 1920s, the German Junkers offered a level of luxury rarely seen in early aviation. With leather seats and real sleeping berths, the flight felt more like a train journey than a turbulent, noisy ride. 1953. The death of the Soviet leader sparked very different reactions worldwide. In the USSR, millions mourned, while in the West, it was seen as the end of an era. His body remained on display in Moscow's mausoleum until 1961. 1929. The Dornier 2X was the largest flying boat of its era, resembling a luxury club more than an aircraft. Its 3 decks featured a smoking lounge, dining room, and seating for 66 passengers that could be converted into sleeping berths at night. In 1957, the USSR launched Laika, the first living passenger aboard an orbital satellite. This milestone marked the dramatic start of the space race and symbolized the Soviet push to prove technological dominance. In 1960, an American U-2 spy plane was shot down over Soviet territory. Pilot Francis Gary Powers was captured, and his equipment, pictured, was displayed at trial as undeniable proof. The U.S. was forced to admit to espionage flights, sparking a major diplomatic crisis. 1928. A passenger enjoys breakfast with a view of the city at an altitude of 3,000 feet. Tables with white tablecloths, porcelain dishes, and fresh flowers made the flight look more like a visit to an elite restaurant than a trip. 1961. Following President John F. Kennedy's call, Americans rushed to build backyard fallout shelters to prepare for a possible nuclear strike. Magazines printed detailed guides, and stores sold survival kits. Yet these shelters offered little real protection against the devastating power of an atomic blast. 1929. Check-in for the first French airline flights looked very different from today. Passengers were actually weighed along with their luggage, since early aircraft were small and had strict weight limits. Every extra kilogram could affect flight safety. See 1895. Lucy the Elephant in New Jersey was built in 1881 as a real estate gimmick. Standing 65 feet tall and costing $38,000, it attracted visitors like Woodrow Wilson and Henry Ford. In 1940s, crowds packed Coney Island's beach and boardwalk, making it one of America's top attractions. Here, 2 women ride the famous parachute jump, a thrill ride that disappeared when the park closed in the 1960s. In 1962, American school children were trained to duck and cover in case of a nuclear strike. Kids hid under desks and covered their heads, a method unlikely to save from a bomb, but possibly useful against flying debris from a nearby blast. 1927. In Los Angeles, kids flocked to freezer ice cream parlors, built to look like giant butter churns complete with oversized handles. These whimsical buildings became local landmarks before being replaced by uniform concrete shopping plazas. 1930s. Pre-flight luggage checks were far simpler than today. This photo shows passengers on a flight from Mexico to Los Angeles having their suitcases casually inspected by the crew right in front of the aircraft. 1950s. Long Island's beaches, especially the Hamptons, became a retreat for wealthy New Yorkers. Sunbathers lounged in style, while thrill-seekers tried sand surfing, pulled across the dunes by jeeps. 1965, the U.S. formally entered the Vietnam War after the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Troops were greeted with flower garlands in South Vietnam, yet the conflict would ultimately claim the lives of over 58,000 Americans. 1933, in Browning, Montana, Kramer's Wigwam opened as a gas station shaped like a giant concrete teepee. Over the decades, it transformed into a cafe, souvenir shop. In 1936, the opening of Gatwick Airport marked a new chapter in air travel. Its check-in desk and passenger club catered to the only regular route at the time, London to Paris. 1986, the Chernobyl disaster became the worst nuclear accident in history. Radiation levels were 400 times higher than Hiroshima, and thousands later died from exposure. In the 1950s, the Pocono Mountains boomed as a resort destination, rivaling the Catskills. Guests enjoyed pools, dances, and outdoor games like shuffleboard, which became a signature pastime of summer getaways. In the 1830s, early passenger planes often featured simple wicker chairs, resembling garden furniture. Comfort was minimal, but it marked the beginning of airline cabin design. 1935. In Hollywood, a seafood restaurant was built entirely covered with 50,000 abalone shells. Waiters served customers directly at their cars, offering crabs, lobsters, and oysters on the half shell. The 19th century brought rapid urban growth to Latin America alongside fierce competition for resources. It was also the era when the long-forgotten ruins of the Inca and Maya were rediscovered, sparking worldwide fascination with these ancient civilizations. In 1872, Yellowstone became America's first national park, largely thanks to the 1871 Hayden expedition, pictured. Since then, it has stood as a symbol of conservation, while remaining a land of deep cultural importance for 27 native tribes connected to it for millennia. This rare 1905 photo shows Las Vegas at its very beginning, as it grew around the newly built San Pedro, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake Railroad. Just a few years later, in 1911, the settlement was officially incorporated as a city. In the 1930s, certain KLM flights offered fold-out beds, turning air travel into a near hotel-like experience. Here, a steward serves tea directly in bed, showcasing the luxury of early aviation. Around 1919, Massachusetts' Atlantic coast became a bustling summer escape, where crowds sought relief from the heat. Women and girls entered the ocean in modest bathing dresses, reflecting the fashion and social norms of the era. In 1992, a barbecue stand shaped like a steam locomotive served mesquite-smoked meat in the American Southwest. The train design evoked both a traditional smoker and the region's deep railroad heritage. In 1865, workers at the El Nopal silver mine in Guanajuato processed ore using massive crushing mills. Silver mining in the region began in 1548, and some mines still operate today, including the legendary Boca del Infierno, plunging 600 meters underground. In 1940, as Las Vegas was just emerging as an entertainment hub, bingo was among the most popular gambling pastimes for visitors. Even during wartime, the city drew crowds seeking leisure and excitement in the Nevada desert. In April 1941, crowds at LaGuardia Field watched the Boeing 314 Clipper of Pan Am, one of the largest and most luxurious aircraft of its era, prepare for flight. These flying boats offered transatlantic service with amenities rivaling five-star hotels. In 1964, Santa Claus traded his sleigh for a deck chair, relaxing under palm trees on a Florida beach. A curious boy stood nearby, as if catching a Christmas legend on vacation. In the late 19th century, the gold rush swept across the globe, from America to Australia and South Africa. Hundreds of thousands of fortune seekers abandoned their homes and jobs, chasing dreams of sudden wealth. The Boeing 314 Clipper of the 1940s was the pinnacle of airborne luxury, with wood paneling, brass accents, and a 50-foot central aisle. A round-trip ticket from New York to Southampton cost $675, roughly $12,000 in today's money, affordable only to the wealthy elite. On August 13, 1868, Arica was wiped out by a tsunami triggered by a massive 9.0 earthquake. Waves up to 50 feet high destroyed homes, railways, and hurled ships inland. In the 1940s, Miami Beach emerged as a symbol of glamour and leisure, drawing wealthy tourists to its sunny shores. Here, a young couple enjoys a water bike ride near South Beach, surrounded by palm trees and luxury resorts. The 1848 gold rush sparked the largest migration in U.S. history, swelling California's population from 157,000 to over 250,000 in under 2 years. By 1850, the boom secured statehood as miners swarmed the hills in search of fortune. Since the 1930s, Las Vegas became famous for its quick marriages. Licenses were issued within hours, and divorces were just as easy to obtain. By the 1950s, dozens of 24-hour chapels were operating, cementing the city's status as America's wedding capital. In the 1950s, Cypress Gardens became the water skiing capital of the world. Even Elvis Presley came here for the show. In the picture, a family enjoys sports during the park's heyday. In the 1940s, Boeing Stratocruiser turned flights into a real luxury. The aircraft had 28 spacious berths, designed even for 2 people. Only a lucky few could afford such flights. 1850, Yerba Buena Cove in San Francisco was filled with hundreds of abandoned ships. Crews deserted them for the gold fields, and many holes were later buried or repurposed as building material. In the 1960s, Las Vegas cemented its reputation as the Sin City, drawing wealthy visitors with luxury hotels and casinos. This photo captures guests playing craps, one of the most iconic games of the era. 1884, Bogota launched its first tramway even before a railway reached the city. Imported from Philadelphia, the cars ran on wooden rails pulled by mules. A ride from Bolivar Square to Chapinero cost just 5 centavos. 1932, Santa Catalina. Island in Southern California was a favorite getaway for beach lovers. Its sunny shores and Pacific waters drew visitors from across the U.S. In 1954, BOAC introduced sky cots for infants, mounted above passenger seats to let babies sleep comfortably during long flights. This innovation highlighted the luxury and passenger care that defined early post-war air travel. In 1957, in Yellowstone, a tourist leans out of his car to photograph a mother bear with 2 cubs. In the mid-20th century, safety rules were rarely followed, and encounters with wildlife often turned into dangerous attractions. 1866. San Francisco transformed from a sleepy fishing village into a booming city of over 25,000 within a few years of the gold rush. Hotels, shops, and gambling halls sprang up. 1950s. Long before personal screens, United Airlines flights featured full-size film projectors. Space was so limited that crew members had to squeeze the bulky equipment into the aisle. 1950s. The post-war car boom turned road trips into America's favorite family pastime. This Florida family packs beach balls, swim rings, and suitcases for a summer getaway. The open road became a new symbol of freedom and leisure. See 1865. This rare photo of a Native American and an African American cowboy reveals the true diversity of the Wild West. The first cowboys were Mexican vaqueros, while native horsemen and formerly enslaved people shaped ranching culture. Yosemite became a national park in 1890, but it wasn't fully unified until 1906. In 1903, President Theodore Roosevelt and naturalist John Muir camped at Inspiration Point, a historic journey. In 1872, Bernhard Holtermann uncovered a 285-kilo quartz specimen with 93 kilo of gold. Known as the Holtermann Nugget, it was the largest reef gold find and helped brand Hill End as the richest quarter mile in the world. In the 1960s, airlines introduced movies shown on a single screen at the front of the cabin, with passengers listening through basic headphones. True personal in-flight entertainment didn't arrive until 1988. In the summer of 1964, swimmers in Hancock, New Hampshire, enjoyed the lake while boats and sailboats glided nearby. This scenic spot in the heart of the Green Mountains was a beloved family getaway. Around 1885, the San Marcos Market in Guerrero displayed sombreros of all kinds, straw for peasants and felt for wealthier gentlemen. The word sombrero comes from the Spanish sombra, shade, reflecting its purpose as sun protection. Las Vegas hosted the legendary 1980 fight between Muhammad Ali and Larry Holmes. Known as the Last Hurrah, it marked one of Ali's final bouts, ending in a loss to Holmes. Around 1876, legendary black cowboy Nat Love, known as the King of the Lasso, rose to fame with his incredible rope skills. He turned cattle work into performance art, touring the West and dazzling crowds at rodeos. By the mid-1850s, Victoria's gold rush produced over a third of the world's gold, with Ballarat at its center. One team of 5 miners struck 136 ounces in a single day, and another 120 the next, equal to about 10 years' wages for an average Englishman. In 1969, the Concorde made its first test flights, marking a new era of supersonic travel and aerospace innovation. This photo shows the British prototype 002 being rolled out in Filton, drawing huge crowds before its maiden flight. In 1890, Rio de Janeiro opened the Corcovado-Cog Railway, Brazil's first tourist rail line. Designed by engineer Pereira Passos and inspired by Swiss mountain routes, it became one of the first in the country to be electrified in 1910. By the 1970s, slot machines had overtaken table games as the centerpiece of Las Vegas casinos. At Circus, opened in 1968, rows of glowing one-armed bandits drew thousands of players, with Nevada's relaxed laws fueling the city's gambling boom. In the 1880s, the chuck wagon was the heart of every cattle drive, and the cook was often the most valued man on the team. Known for turning simple food like beans and biscuits into meals, cooks sometimes even doubled as cowhands. On February 5, 1869, miners John Deason and Richard Oates unearthed the welcome stranger nugget in Victoria, weighing 72 kilohoras, the largest gold nugget ever found. Pulled from beneath tree roots, it remains a legendary symbol of the gold rush. Model yacht racing in Central Park dates back to the late 19th century, gaining popularity in the 1880s. This 1910 photo shows enthusiasts launching their sailboats on the Conservatory Pond, a pastime that remains alive over a century later. In 1977, Queen Elizabeth II took her first Concorde flight, traveling from Barbados to London in just 3 hours and 42 minutes. The flight even landed 3 minutes early, and Her Majesty reportedly chose white wine and duck from the menu. Unlike Hollywood's myths, cowboy saloons were far from glamorous, like this one in Miles City, Montana, where the paint was rough and chairs were scarce. Interestingly, the Golden Grain Belt beer advertised here is still brewed today by Shell's brewery in Minnesota. The telegraph revolutionized 19th century communication. Messages that once took 2 days to travel from New York to Chicago could now be sent instantly. Innovators like Guglielmo Marconi transformed how the world connected. Mount Rainier, a glacier-capped active volcano rising 14,267 feet, became a national park in 1899. This 1915 photo shows climbers ascending the vast Paradise Glacier. The brutal winter of 1886-1887 killed hundreds of thousands of cattle across the Great Plains. Known as the Great Die-Up, it ended the era of open-range ranching and reshaped the cattle industry. In 1979, Freddie Laker launched the SkyTrain from London to New York, making transatlantic flights affordable for ordinary travelers. Though his airline eventually collapsed, it pioneered the low-cost model that transformed modern aviation. Around 1890, Bolivian porters in La Paz carried heavy trunks on their backs through the streets of the high-altitude capital. The rare photograph was taken by American journalist Frank Carpenter, who later became famous for his Carpenter's World Travel series. In the 1860s, thousands of Chinese migrants traveled to Victoria's gold fields, often working abandoned claims left by others. This photo shows an overcrowded coach packed with workers and their belongings, including large woven bamboo hats essential for long days under the blazing sun. In colonial America, carriages and wagons were built in small blacksmith shops, crafted entirely by hand and made to order. Workshops like this one in Fallston, Maryland, became the foundation of the transport industry, where apprentices learned the trade under skilled masters.
In 1920, a giant marble statue of President Lincoln was installed inside the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. The memorial officially opened in 1922, more than 50 years after his death. In the 1920s, Walter and Cordelia Knott started selling boysenberries from a small roadside stand in California. Their Knott's Berry Farm soon gained popularity and eventually became one of America's first theme parks. In 1895, an expedition ventured along the Santo Anastácio River in Brazil, exploring remote Amazon tributaries. Even by the late 19th century, such journeys were perilous, with explorers fearing both the wilderness and the risk of being lost forever in the jungle. By 1830, Bangor, Maine, had become the world's largest lumber port, shipping an astonishing 145 million feet of boards each year. The timber industry quickly became one of the key economic forces of the young United States, supplying global demand for wood. The French launched construction of the Panama Canal in 1881, even bringing in Gustave Eiffel to design the locks. But by 1899 the project collapsed, turning into France's biggest financial scandal, with leaders including Ferdinand de Lesseps facing trial. In July 1897, 2 ships arrived in Seattle carrying 2 tons of Klondike gold, sparking mass hysteria. The Seattle Post-Intelligencer headlines screamed gold. And thousands rushed north, including the city's mayor, who quit his job to join the hunt. In the 1930s, Cordelia Knott became famous for her fried chicken, and by the 1940s the couple added Ghost Town to Knott's Berry Farm, the first Wild West-themed area. With wooden buildings, a blacksmith shop and saloons, the farm quickly turned into a major attraction. In the second half of the 19th century, Key West became the center of American cigar production thanks to Cuban immigrants. He hired Cuban craftsmen and produced real Havana cigars in the United States, bypassing high duties and Spanish trade restrictions. This allowed Key West to become the cigar capital of America. Rodeo grew out of friendly cowboys competitions and by 1888 had become a professional sport with the first tournament in Prescott, Arizona. The photo from 1897 shows the fall of a cowboy during Frontier Day in Cheyenne, one of the oldest and largest rodeos in the United States, a tradition that began back in 1872. The Gateway Arch in St. Louis was completed in 1965, with the Keystone, the final piece, lifted into place at 630 feet, making it the tallest monument in the United States. Inside the Keystone is a time capsule said to contain over 760,000 signatures of local residents and possibly other hidden relics. In 1899, Dawson shopkeepers accepted gold dust as payment from prospectors. Although nearly $1 billion worth of gold was taken from the Klondike, most miners left empty-handed, while real fortunes were made by merchants and saloon owners. The textile industry was the first to usher America into the industrial era. By 1800, dozens of factories in New England operated with tens of thousands of spindles, and by the 1820s production had spread southward. The arrival of the mechanical loom revolutionized the industry by bringing all processes under one roof. In 1903, Edison's The Great Train Robbery became the first American Western, setting the foundation for the genre. Gutzon Borglum, the sculptor of Mount Rushmore, worked on a model of the monument in his studio before carving it into the mountain. Completed in 1941, the colossal tribute featuring 4 presidents became one of America's most iconic landmarks. In 1903, cowboys in Hugo, Colorado, rode alongside a train to greet President Theodore Roosevelt. Roosevelt once owned a ranch in Dakota, but after the devastating winter of 1886 to 1887 lost half of his herd. Still, he remained deeply attached to cowboy life, later forming the famed cavalry regiment known as the Rough Riders. Before the advent of electric refrigerators, huge blocks of ice carved out of lakes and rivers were the main way to store food. In the 19th century, ice was stored in glaciers covered with sawdust to deliver it to homes and businesses all year round. In the 19th century, loggers couldn't transport timber by roads, so they built massive rafts and floated them down rivers to sawmills. These rafts were chained together, allowing sections to bend and safely navigate river turns. The photo shows loggers preparing a raft in Tillamook, Oregon. In 1863, London opened the world's first underground passenger system, forever transforming urban transport. The route linked Paddington and Farringdon Street, and this 1862 photo shows officials inspecting the railway before its grand opening. In 1913, Henry Ford introduced the world's first moving assembly line for cars, making production faster and cheaper. This innovation secured America's leadership in the auto industry and forever changed manufacturing. In 1964, the R32 Brightliners debuted, becoming the longest-serving trains in New York City subway history. This photo shows transit officials inspecting the brand-new cars at the Budd Company factory in Philadelphia. In the 1960s, Tokyo introduced special railway staff known as pushers, whose job was to literally squeeze passengers into overcrowded subway cars during rush hour. Even today, such scenes remain common in the world's busiest transit system. In 1952, thousands of Muscovites gathered at Komsomolskaya Station to celebrate the opening of a new metro line. The station became a symbol of Soviet grandeur, adorned with mosaics, massive columns, and majestic chandeliers. By the early 20th century, coal had become the backbone of America's industry, powering steam engines and steel plants. What once was collected from surface seems now required miners to descend deep underground, like this group in West Virginia. Mont Saint-Michel in France is one of Europe's most iconic monasteries, rising dramatically above Normandy's tides. Old photos show it surrounded by fishermen and locals, while today it stands as a major tourist destination. The Paris Metro, opened in 1900, quickly became one of the busiest transit systems in the world. This 1940s photo shows Place d'Italie station packed with commuters waiting for their train. In October 1943, Chicago saw its first paid ride on the brand-new subway system. Excited crowds gathered as a packed train departed for Ravenswood and Albany Park. On May 6, 1954, 25-year-old medical student Roger Bannister made history by running the mile in 3 minutes 59.4 seconds, breaking the impossible 4-minute barrier. His achievement was compared to climbing Everest, and he was later knighted for his contribution to sports. In 1889, Susan La Flèche Picotte became the first Native American woman to earn a medical degree, graduating with honors. Returning to Nebraska, she served as the only doctor for over 1,200 people and founded the first privately funded hospital on a Native reservation. Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross in 1881, inspired by the work of the International Red Cross abroad. This 1906 photo shows the ARC headquarters in San Francisco, where staff organized relief after the devastating earthquake and fire that nearly destroyed the city. Amelia Earhart was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic and the first person to fly solo from Hawaii to mainland USA. In 1937, she vanished during her attempt to circumnavigate the globe, leaving behind one of aviation's greatest mysteries. In the early 20th century, New York's 5 Points was infamous for poverty, violence, and corruption, becoming the birthplace of organized crime in America. This photo from around 1900 shows members of the 5 Points gang, led by Paul Kelly, one of the first powerful Italian-American mobsters. During World War II, thousands of American women stepped into traditionally male roles, from mechanics and riveters to firefighters. This 1941 photo shows a group of female firefighters training at Pearl Harbor's naval shipyard, just months before the infamous Japanese attack. In the 1920s, the London Underground introduced automated ticket machines, considered cutting-edge technology at the time. This 1928 photo shows passengers purchasing tickets at Piccadilly Station shortly after its expansion. In 1954, Marilyn Monroe arrived at a U.S. base in Korea and performed 10 shows in just 4 days for over 100,000 soldiers. She interrupted her honeymoon with Joe DiMaggio for the tour, later calling it the best experience of her life. In 1927, officers in Los Angeles used a portable X-ray machine to inspect hay bales and discovered 25 cases of whiskey hidden inside. This technology gave law enforcement an edge in the Prohibition-era's cat-and-mouse game with organized crime. Friends, if you liked this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. We have even more rare and amazing stories ahead.